page. Okay, now,
Oh, we're close.
roll call
Bob Wilkinson,
here.
Jeff Perry,
Here,
Harry Arcieri.
Here.
Will Harris. Mike Hill
Here.
and Brett Harper is just logging on.
Okay. Next on the item of the agenda is approval of the meeting summary from our last meeting. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes and stuff?
yep.
Okay, does anyone have any revisions?
Nope.
Okay, hearing none, we'll go to the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, approval of changes to the agenda, Mr. Will.
Can't hear you.
Had the mute. Like he's got.
We can't hear ya. Hey, Will, do you have your mute on?
I didn't. How's that?
Okay, good. So
Okay,
you wanted
sorry
to
about that.
add something?
If we could please add short-term rentals to the agenda, and if we could add it early on, I do need to depart here in about 45 minutes.
Okay. All right, anyone have any objections to revising the agenda?
No, I'll make a motion to accept the agenda with the addition
Okay,
that Will made.
I'll second. Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Right.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Does anyone have a conflict of interest with anything that we have on our agenda?
Nope.
Okay, good. Our next meeting date is going to be March 18th. Oh, while I'm at it, we have a guest.
Oh, it's Constance Ibsen. I live in Union and this is my dog.
Okay. Staff updates?
Not too many. We'll talk about the short-term rental thing here in a minute.
All right.
And, March 18th, the only thing I have on the agenda is to, I'm gonna provide you guys with some examples of some, decision matrices for the capital improvement program. Just to get, the PAC's opinion, which I can, take to our departments, later on this year and, get their opinion on her opinion. So we're gonna talk about that on March 18th. I don't know if the consultants will have anything on the comp plan yet. I told them to let me know by the end of this week. And I'll update you on that as well, but that's all I have. Oh, actually, one other thing. So we may have an extension for the comp plan work from June 30th, 2025 to December 31st, 2025. So it's passed the Senate and House, and it just has to be signed by the governor. So we may have an extension if we need that. So it'll be there. Since we've kind of gotten a late start on the comp plan work. But that's it from me.
Okay. Go.
Nothing.
Okay, and no, okay. Any other business? Okay. Any public comments from anybody online? Okay. In that case, we're gonna move on to the workshop.
Or we're gonna do short-term rentals
Yeah,
first
short-term.
and then the workshop.
Okay,
Is,
all right, Will, take it away.
All right, first, I want to particularly thank Marissa and all the staff members that put together the short-term rental workshop. Great information, good review of the survey, and a good review of what, some of our neighboring counties are doing with short-term rentals. I think what I heard coming out of there is that at some point the PAC is going to be asked to either review or develop a recommendation for short-term rentals my one question that I'd like answered before we get too far into that process, and I'm hoping I sort of intend to do this to let staff have a heads up, is I'd like to know what are the legal requirements in Washington State for short-term rentals, and specifically, are we as a county meeting those requirements today? And again, that's not to be answered here. Certainly it can be discussed, but I just didn't want to wait a month or two and then have the topic come up and have this question out there. But to me, that's knowing what the law requires, and then knowing if we're doing that today will really be helpful as we start to think about some of those ideas that might be beyond the immediate law, but might be helpful to our community, such as registration or inspections. And we went through a number of different ideas. So I just wanted to put that out and put that on the table as maybe something that can be worked between now and whenever that surfaces back to the PAC.
Okay, anyone have any comments?
Is there a draft of any of the, like the existing regulations for short-term rentals? That I can, because I'm still, as a new member here, I'm still trying to wrap my head around everything and I have a little bit of interest in that. Not that I don't have any vacation rentals in Washington, but I do have one in California. And they've developed, pretty good rules down there over the years, and just wanted to see if there was anything that, those rules might add to these or whatever, but if I had something to look at that might help me to digest that.
So Mason County doesn't have any short-term vacation rental regulations. So I don't have anything.
So we're starting from
We're
ground
starting
zero.
fresh, yes.
Yeah, because I have, some information I can maybe share with you, the group, via email of just what, what they do down there, which is, pretty comprehensive. But it's, it's nothing out of the ordinary. It's just simple things like one of the things I think is important is that wherever there is vacation rentals, a person who has one needs to have someone on call 24/7 in case there's an issue or something, with a tenant there, that there's somebody that can call and come and fix a toilet leak or whatever, so they're not calling emergency services all the time to fix stuff. And I think that's like probably the number one important rule. And there's many others, but that's certainly one of them.
Yes, definitely. You can share whatever you have.
Yeah. Okay. I'll
So
do
that, would that be California state or individual counties?
Well, I think it applies pretty much to the state, but I'm not familiar with that. I know it applies to San Luis Obispo County.
Okay.
And then, and also in Colorado, I'm familiar with that one there too, in Carbondale, Colorado. They have very similar rules, but that's probably, I think that's probably the
If you
most
got something
important.
that they got on PDF,
Yeah, I have some email. I got everything's in an email. There's
Okay.
links, to various places, but I can send them
URLs.
out to everybody and,
well,
for review.
send it to staff and
Yeah.
they can distribute, yeah. Okay,
Yeah, no, I was impressed by the number. I mean, a lot of people commented.
yeah.
One, which I think is great. Two, I'm glad we started to kind of codify the thing so we could kind of figure out where, because I think would be handy on other elements in the future on comp plan, that same approach, if it gets into a lot of comments. And interestingly, there's a fair amount of people out there that I was fascinated by, even people that had bad experiences, but still didn't mind them being there if certain things were handled.
Right.
And so it was to me, it was amazing just how reasonable, there was at least a group that was fairly rational about it. There were some that were off a little bit.
Yeah, I read
But-
some of them.
But I was amazed, how some people really look, like some of them, I'd almost say they had to be in planning the way they wrote it. Because the answer was too descriptive and it's just like they'd been somewhere before this had happened. So,
A couple of the other basic rules that I like are, what's the occupancy, and it's generally it's based on the number of bedrooms in the house, and then also another one was parking.
Yeah,
Because a lot of the neighbors complain about parking, if there's no parking, you have people, they're having a party there at the house, and then, you know, next thing you know, there's 10 cars parked in the neighborhood, and that's causing a problem, you know?
So anyway, you know, bottom line is, more is better. But more input like that is, you know, at least it gives me more of a feeling, a comprehensive look at it, not,
1,500 inputs, that's
a decent.
that's significant. And thanks for staff to putting it into an Excel format. It was much easier to page through
Filter.
and filter.
And
Yeah.
of course, there's something that a lot of the people that are property owners probably aren't gonna like, but that's permits. They need to be permitted.
No, it's, yes, it'll be interesting how it
Yeah.
comes. But yeah, I mean, you instantly see it, you know,
Right.
where it's going from that one step to the next, and
Right, it's a can of worms, you
Right,
know, and it,
right.
but it's, you know, it's something that needs to be addressed for
So-
sure.
anyway, that's my 2 bits on it.
Mhm. Okay. Okay, anybody online want to have a chat about this?
Let's move on to the workshop. Let's stick to the agenda.
We are.
Wasn't that off agenda?
No,
Well, actually, it was added.
It was added.
All right, well,
Where was it added? I see item number 3 on the shared agenda. Discuss comprehensive plan update, summarize and update needs, GMA checklist, approach public engagement.
well, one Charlie says approval of changes to the agenda, which will ask to have it added. But anyway, moving on to the workshop, since we've had a discussion on Will's thing. So let's work it.
Okay, good evening, everybody. My name is Alicia Ayers. I'm with SCJ Alliance. Christina, my colleague, is also on this project. She is in our Lacey office. I am in Spokane. We have a team of Lacey planners also helping on this project. Kakai Bojang is on the line to listen in and learn and glean and understand who each of you are. So thank you all for having us here tonight. I have a presentation, and you did receive several pieces of information in your packet: a public participation plan, GMA checklist, the presentation, and the community profile. So hopefully you have access to those or have had access. And if you have questions, we can certainly talk about them. I will be taking notes as we go through this. It's supposed to be a bit of an interactive presentation, but first I'm going to just kind of take you through the basics of the comp plan process and what that process looks like for Mason County. I will share my screen, so let me go ahead and get that going. Okay, can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Just get up my notes here, still seeing the presentation? Okay, great. So comp plan process for Mason County. We just got under contract in the last couple of weeks. I think Marissa is there, and she reported that the legislator is looking at extending your deadline from June 2025 to December 2025. So I know that that might come up, particularly as we're talking about how are we getting the work done in this time frame, and what does public engagement look like? Does that allow for enough time for all of the updates? It certainly does in both timelines, but it is nice to have a little bit of extra time. And I have the timeline for both of those that I can show you, so you see how that works out in subsequent slides. So our agenda for this workshop is just an introduction to the team. I went over that a little bit. Christina is also on the team. Like I mentioned, she's not here, but Kakai is here, and myself. Introduction to comp plan process, the project schedule, the 2 versions that I mentioned, a summary of the needed updates. So that's where we're going to be referring back to your GMA checklist if you've already perused that information or have it in front of you. A summary of the update needs. This is pretty high level stuff. We can get into the details of the checklist if you want to. That's perfectly fine. And then our approach to public engagement. And as part of the public engagement, we'll be exploring how you'd like to be involved, and in terms of what the needs are, what kind of needs do you perceive? Not everything is about the GMA checklist and what the state says needs to be in your comp plan, but it's also you know, what the community and what this body as well as city staff have to pour into the comp plan update as well. We'll talk a little bit about next steps following this meeting, and we can kind of determine I'll sort of be thinking about what we might need for that March 18th meeting, I believe. And maybe that's too soon, maybe it's not, we can work that out. And then any Q&A can happen throughout the presentation and the meeting. There'll be times to provide that feedback, but we can also do that at the end if you'd like. Okay, so the purpose of the comp plan, well, the purpose of me being here tonight, that is to share the process for the Mason County Comprehensive Plan. I've already sort of alluded that to the fact that communities can do these in different ways. It doesn't have to be by the book of how the Department of Commerce prescribes everything. It's also a lot of community flair in what you see is important for the county. And that builds itself into the comp plan language itself, but also your public engagement process offers a lot of creativity. And so we want to share with you what we have outlined for that process and then take your feedback. And then really, I just want to make sure that this is an open dialogue so that we can be collecting the input from you guys, because you are part of the community. You understand the sort of bigger picture of the community. And so we want to make sure that you have enough time to speak during this time, as well as subsequent meetings that feed into the process. So comprehensive planning in Washington. Has anyone been through a comprehensive planning process before? Some folks.
Into the where? The website?
Have you been involved in a comprehensive planning process?
I have.
Okay, and I got a hand up for Ken. Can I assume, okay, Will, you've been in it too, Terry? Great. Okay, so you know a little bit about what this is. So Department of Commerce really runs the comprehensive plan overview through your local or regionally, well, they're regional members who go and check in with the county, cities, and towns. They're your representative on the Department of Commerce side. What we're looking at here is a map of Washington. It shows in green the 18 fully planning counties. So those are the counties who have opted into the Growth Management Act back in the 90s. And so they have to plan for future growth. You can see Mason County there, just north of Thurston, has opted into it, whereas Grays Harbor, which is in gray, is only a partially planning county. So typically they're characteristic of slower growing populations, a lot more rural land. And the big thing is they did not opt into growth management planning back in the 90s. And then we have the blue counties who have also opted into that fully planning cohort, but there are a few different types of regulations that they also have to plan under. So that's a little bit about the state of Washington comprehensive planning. Fully planning jurisdictions have to do, of course, the comp plan. They have to update their development regulations. And then everybody, whether they're fully planning or partially planning, has to have a critical areas ordinance. The basic level of update is really following that prescriptive GMA checklist and making sure that those particular updates are updated in your comprehensive plan. It used to be that the comprehensive plans were required to be updated every 8 years. That is recently changed in 2023, I believe, or 22 to 10 years, with a check-in period every 5. So it's the timeline is extended, which is kind of nice, but also if the community feels like some substantial changes have happened, let's say you have a faster growing community, they might opt to update their comp plan sooner than that. Maybe you want to add a new zoning district or what have you. There are other ways to do an update. Of course, you have your annual amendments that are coming through that are changing zoning or adding zoning or changing language within a comprehensive plan. And then we have these great big periodic reviews, which is what you're going through now.
Is that, I put a link in the chat as I was doing my homework today. I noticed that the link in the chat takes to an updated picture. So my question for you is this on the website, that link, there are actually 4 colors, the green, blue, and Grays Harbor County is blue, not gray. If you open up this link that I put in the chat there, So I'm thinking that's not
More
up to,
current.
this thing is not current.
Yeah,
Quite a few changes.
that's a very good question, Brad, and very astute of you. That map on the website that Brad has provided is a bit more current. I apologize. I thought this one was more up to date. I don't believe that any of the counties have changed, but this is probably an older version from the last periodic review. Mason County is still fully planning. Grace Harbor, if you click on the links, this is kind of a cool map. It still shows it as partially planning. Snohomish, King, and Pierce are color coded differently, and I am assuming that is because of how quickly growing they are. They are much bigger jurisdictions. They fall under a little bit different umbrella, but thank you, Brad. That's very helpful, that link. We will get our map
Kitsap
updated.
also. Kitsap is
Yeah.
in the same
Yep,
position.
you're right.
In here, so.
Mason County.
Okay, well, I'm gonna keep going if that's okay.
Thank you, Alicia.
Okay. Okay, so the comprehensive plan, it's very specific, it's really very specific to Mason County. It helps you guys guide the government as well as officials guide decision making. So that can be from budgetary down to programmatic, things that staff will be doing during the year or over several years. It guides the city's future vision. So through this comp planning process, there is a visioning step that we're going to do in our public engagement. And that's really, what does Mason County want to be in a long range planning horizon? So that's about 20 years. We do a vision statement out for 20 years so that you can have your goals, policies, and actions all seeking to achieve that future vision state. We'll take you through that process as we go through this. And then it establishes those fundamental goals, policies, and actions to help you achieve that future vision. We really build the development of those things into our public engagement process, vetting your goals and policies and actions with the public, as well as workshopping them with you and with staff. And so that's all really kind of built into an iterative process where we continually come back and refine things as we go until we get to that draft that everybody's ready to move forward with and adopt. Your last plan was updated in 2015. Mason County is growing and changing, and that's not expected to slow. There are some things that even already through our stakeholder interviews, we've already started to vet. For instance, I met with some of the chamber folks and the EDC and talked about, hey, it identifies Belfair, Shelton, and several other communities as fast growing. Is that still the case? Do you feel like that's still the case? And we're already starting to have these conversations that will feed into our summary and feed into some of the next steps that we have with you. The plan will allow you to be eligible for future grants. Department of Commerce has certainly had a lot of grants in the last couple of years. It will also, sometimes when people get behind or communities get behind on their comprehensive plan update, it can slow the process or stop the process for public works grants or infrastructure, that being utilities or streets or roads. So, and I've seen this happen with communities. I was actually just talking to a community today who needed to make sure that we were communicating with the Department of Commerce so that they could see in good faith we were still moving forward with that comp plan update and weren't getting stalled out. So that is a very real thing as well. Okay, the update process. This is just kind of a high level overview of what the update process entails. So our very first steps are baseline and demographic update, and that would be your community profile that you received. I know there were some questions about the growth projections and sort of the X and Y axis and why they were figured that way. And I can get into that in a moment. But that's the type of data that we're gathering right now. It gives us a basis for understanding your community. We also go through and pull any previous planning documents. This is countywide, so we're looking at the little cities and towns within the county, as well as parks planning, transportation planning, capital facilities. All of that stuff feeds into your comprehensive plan. We have our kickoff meeting. We've had one with the county staff already. And we are also working on the city of Shelton's comprehensive plan. So we're really seeing that high need to be integrated with their process and in step with that. So that's really the first piece of what we do is gather all this information, really understand your county, and then we build that into our public engagement process. We have a public engagement plan, which you have a copy of. That's going to be talking with the community, the stakeholders. We've already started the stakeholder interviews, your body and the Board of County Commissioners, followed by the policy framework. So that's sort of that iterative process I was talking about, where we get into public engagement, policy goals and actions development, as well as future visioning, bring that back to the PAC, and then do another update. And so, you know, if done well, and that's our goal, we won't have to come back 5, 6, 7, 8 times. We would do this a few times and keep the process moving. And that's why I'm feeling really pretty assured on our timelines, whichever direction that happens to go. But just knowing that we already have a meeting that we could attend in March, I think that this group is going to be pretty involved, and that's really, really excellent. And layering over with the goals and policies update is the plan development, the plan document development. So all the while when we're doing all this information, we're also drafting the comprehensive plan. And as we get to the tail end of that public engagement process, we can begin to feed those chapters to you one at a time or in bulk. We've done it either way, but we'll be developing that along the way as we go. That really helps us capture such relevant, fresh information in real time. And then it also builds a little bit of extra cushion in there in terms of timeline, so that you're getting that information early on and you're having enough time for review and comment. And the last step in the process is finalizing that draft plan. So that's after we've gone through the review of each of the chapters, and we've already gone through the development code updates. What we're going to do is assess where you guys need to go with your development code updates and provide an assessment memo. And what that's going to enable is for, like I said, policy setting and direction setting, where staff are going through and updating those development regulations. It's going to be very specific and to the point, so it's very clear what needs to be updated. Any comments or questions or thoughts? Okay, keep going here. Okay, so we'll get to the project schedule. I've got 2 slides for the project schedule. One is showing this is showing the original timeline that we proposed in our proposal when it went out to RFP. So this puts you at a deadline of July 1, 2025. So we have our monthly check-in meetings, progress meetings. Those happen every month. That's just for us to be in tune with staff, keep the update process moving. Your public engagement runs the full time that we're doing the comprehensive plan update. And so the stars there on the screen indicate when we'll be having meetings. So we've got orientation interviews, our engagement activities. Those run at strategic points along the process. I'll get into that in a moment. And then interdepartmental or agency coordination. So that includes some of that coordination with the city of Shelton, as well as checking back with this body. Phase 3, initiate and envision. So that's sort of the stage we're at right now, collecting that demographic information, completing the GMA checklist, looking at the population projections and land use needs, collecting all of that baseline information that we can feed back to you, but also that we can dump right into that public engagement process so we can start to talk with the community. Once we get going on our public engagement phase or step next, then we'll really be exploring those land use scenarios. So we'll be preparing up to 3 of those. It's usually a no growth and then 2 growth scenarios, where it's talking about how will the city change in the next 20 years? And as part of that visioning process, are we changing any zoning? This is a process that takes a little bit of time, and it also is really engaging with you guys and the communities, so that we can make sure we get it right. We certainly don't want to put something out there that is not in favor by the community or the planning commission or any other of the elected bodies. As we move through that process, that's going to begin to shape our goals and policies in those countywide planning policies. Some of the countywide planning policies may be no longer relevant we'll be looking for redundancy, and that's really the first step we'll do to do a clean through. Then we're going to start to build in that iterative process with those scenarios and the public engagement. Once we determine which future scenario that is most favorable, then we will really dive into the very specific goals and policies and actions to achieve that. That becomes your future vision. From that point forward, we can really begin to draft the comp plan, and then it becomes very specific towards that future vision. It's not, it's not general and very open. It's really, nope, this is what we decided. This is what we worked through the process. We made all of these changes and we have this final visioning scenario, and we really craft that comprehensive plan around that vision. We also make sure that your sub area plans are all integrated, and we're talking about those planning processes through this. Implementation is certainly huge, and then the final comprehensive plan is developed, and then that can look like that iterative process where we bring chapters to you individually and work through them, or we bring them in bulk. At the very end, there is an environmental review and then the adoption period. So you guys are going to be going through the environmental impact statement. EIS is short environmental impact statement, EIS. So there's background that you have to do. You have to do a full write out on the existing conditions within the community. That community profile will help with that. Then we go through scoping. That's really understanding the full impact of the environmental impacts. We'll be preparing the DEIS, that's draft environmental impact statement. That goes out to the public for approximately 30 days. A public workshop is held. And then we go into the final environmental impact statement. And that's where we've really determined what that final scenario will look like. That also requires a public comment period with responses to their comments. And that's all very formulaic. We have to be very specific and intentional in responding to those comments, as well as making them public all along the process here. Following the wrap up of the environmental review is the adoption of the comprehensive plan. And Brad, I see you have a question. Where is the project schedule? So I don't think that made it into your packet, would be my guess. Is Marissa there? Maybe she can confirm.
Not in the packet, it's just in the slides, so right now.
Excuse me? I couldn't understand that.
It's just in the slides, Brad.
Just in a slide, so when will it be developed? Yeah.
So like the slide that's up on the screen right now?
Yes.
Oh,
Yep, just
well then-
present.
So then we got it in the
You
PDF.
did get it in the PDF.
It's in the, Brad, it's in the PDF that we got, the 4 or 5 documents.
It's on the website.
Oh.
On the advisory.
I don't think it is.
Well,
We had 5 documents. We had the PPP, we had the community profile.
Go into the presentation, Brad.
You said what?
The presentation document that I believe was attached.
Okay, yeah, those two slides, but there should be a working document
We have
behind this, I would
Yep.
think. It should
We
be a
have-
living document.
Introductory meeting that I'm sure Alicia and her team will provide us with a more formal schedule.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
absolutely, yes.
Cause I mean, if that's done in Primavera or Microsoft Project, then it's gonna have to be a living document.
Absolutely. Right. You're right, Brad. We have an Excel spreadsheet with the timelines on it. And we can provide those to you. I think we just have held off because there's 2 timelines we're kind of working with. Let me scroll to the next screen here.
So Alicia, you're using Excel, you're not using P6 or MS Project?
We're not right now, but we will probably use Smart Sheets. It's just like a Microsoft project management tool, but it's all web-based. Yeah, Commerce has been using that.
I think what Brad's asking, and if I'm reading his mind right, I agree with him. Basically, each one of these bars here actually represent a series of sub-activities. I think he's looking for where are those sub-activities, who's tracking them, and how do we know if we're staying on target, if we're slipping a little bit?
That's a very good point. Go ahead, Brad.
So,
Okay.
I mean, that's, yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly.
Okay, yeah, we just
Hey,
had.
hey, Will?
Oh,
This is a kickoff meeting, okay?
Yep.
Okay,
I think we should let Alicia continue on.
yep, no problem.
okay. And we can certainly develop a more robust tool for tracking. We do track all of this through some of our other tools that we have, but this is a high level look at that. So same grouping of activities, same grouping of phases and tasks that you see along the left-hand side. This timeline extends to that December 2025 date. So everything is just a little bit more spaced out to allow for that additional time. Mostly where this helps is on the very last step, that phase 5 through the adoption phase. It's nice to have that extra buffer of about 6 months for that process. Getting it through the DEIS as well as all of the adoption steps through the county. It can take about that long. You know, you don't want to short yourself on that. It doesn't feel very good. So that would be the plan. Otherwise, we would be backing up into December 2024 potentially, or Q1 of 25 to really get that process started as well, or be mindful of it so that we're moving things right along on that original timeline that ends on July 1. Okay, keep going. So summary of update needs. We're moving away from the schedule and we're going to be looking at the GMA checklist. Now, I didn't get into all the nitty-gritty details in the checklist, just tried to keep everything pretty high level. So the topics that you see on your screen are all of the different categories that are reviewed within that GMA checklist, as well as development regulations. That one was not on there, but it's in the checklist. The ones in red are the ones that I'll go over in the subsequent slides. They had the majority of the changes needed for the comprehensive plan. And so those are in red on your screen. But at the end of the day, all of them will be updated because, for example, your population projections impact all of these things. And so that type of information has to be carried through and things have to be adjusted to meet that projection. Okay, land use. So for your land use element, this is really the one that's going to take the most updates along with the housing element. That's kind of the nature of these comprehensive plans, especially right now in the planning environment we're in with all the changes to land use and housing. So like I said, we're going to be incorporating those growth projections. We're going to look at the growth allocations across the city. That's where we're going to get into the scenario planning and that future visioning. This is going to dovetail pretty nicely in your development code updates because we're going to be looking for things in the development code or the comprehensive plan that might negate one another. So they might be canceling each other out, particularly if you're envisioning or starting to forecast growth happening in particular locations. We want to make sure that the development codes aren't set up in such a way that are not going to allow for that future growth, for instance. And as we talk about housing and incorporation of a variety of housing types and different income levels, we're really going to want to be careful of what is existing and what needs to change and making sure those things are consistent. All of your goals and policies throughout your comprehensive plan are being updated. So that's something that will carry through. The land use element does take the greatest hit through those scenario planning processes. And then your plan will include maybe a little mention of the process, but the future vision will be a big part of this element. Okay, your housing element update. So along with the land use element, we're going to be looking at land capacity analysis to address the availability of land, as well as we'll be looking at that analysis by income band level. So once we start running those numbers on your different zoning, your vacant lands, your underdeveloped lands, then we're really going to be able to tell across a map citywide what that looks like, where there are higher income bands, lower income bands, and what the needs are of the community. Goals and policies will be updated in relation to the role of ADUs. So some of the new legislation that has come out has required communities to adopt accessory dwelling unit regulations. We'll get into the details of that when we come back with more information a little bit later. And then we're going to be looking at racially disparate impacts in displacement risk. So through that process, we'll again be looking at the existing comprehensive plan and development regulations to make sure that there's nothing in there that racially impacts different communities. And Brad, an ADU is an accessory dwelling unit. So we'll be looking at different impacts to race and where that impacts housing and where those things cross. Anything more, Brad? I know you had that one question.
You said accessible or no, dwelling
Accessory.
accessory? Okay.
I just put it in the chat just so that's clear. Okay. The other element that we're going to be, that requires quite a few updates is your capital facilities update. And one of the reasons for this is we want to make sure that the capital facilities element is consistent and ready for those growth changes and planning for your 20 and 6-year planning horizons. So there could be impacts on your capital facilities within the county, and we want to make sure that we're planning for that. So we'll be working with the Public Works Department as well as the planning group here to make sure that that's updated. Review and identify transportation facilities and other public facilities for services that serve within the UGAs. So the UGA is urban growth area around the smaller communities as well as countywide, making sure that that is consistent with your growth projections. And then we'll also look at these other 2 bullets on here. Again, policies that clarify budget related, where's the finances coming from, what's the plan for future finances. That's all built into the capital facilities planning process. Going back to what I said earlier, our initial stage to understand your planning environment, what has been updated so far. Sometimes communities have a capital facilities plan that is already updated and kind of dumps into the process, and others do not. And that's just something that we work through along the way. Okay, your transportation element is another big portion of this work. We're going to be updating the inventory of all of your facilities and services, since those have probably changed from 2015. We will review and update your level of service information, including a non-motorized level of service. We have our transportation planners online not online tonight, but on board in the project to help with this update. They work on with many communities to do their transportation element because it is so highly specialized and specific. Oh, good question, Brad. Brad's question is Shelton the only UGA in Mason County? I can double check that while we're on the line, but go right ahead.
Hey, Brad, you're gonna have to read the old comprehensive plan and get up to speed here.
Well, I was trying to remember that. I thought I did when we was that 2 meetings ago.
No problem. I'm just saying that there's, you know. We just,
Excuse me?
we need to be up on our history.
Belfair has one too.
It was a couple months ago, so I was just asking that question.
Yeah.
Save me having to go back and I
Actually, we talked about that several times.
Yeah.
Moving on.
Okay. Let's see. So we're going to also review your transportation improvement plan. So that really looks at the specific projects that are being updated, projects being related to transportation, roads, facilities, so on and so forth. We'll look at your traffic forecast and system needs and any projection with that, and then review the goals and policies and update them to meet these new planning documents, your level of service, TIP, as well as the facilities and services that you need to meet the growth projections. Okay, so general updates. we're going to update the countywide planning policies to fit the county's future vision as well as meet the GMA requirements. There are more policy requirements in the GMA checklist this time than what I've seen in the past. So we'll want to make sure that we incorporate all of those. And then we're also going to review and update your parks and recreation facilities and amenities list. So working with any parks planners or
Yeah.
county staff through that process. Okay, so this is a time for you guys to give me some of your feedback, if you have some, on what your priorities are, or what you think the priorities should be for the comprehensive plan update. And I'll take notes as you speak so that we can capture this information.
Raise my hand. This is Jeff Carey. One thing I've always had about these comprehensive plans is that we plan. And I understand a plan doesn't always hit the mark, you know, where we're going, what have you. My concern is that we don't take the time to look at the past plans to see what we've thought we were gonna do and what the reality of what, and, you know, does it need correction? Does it need updating with the land use policies, you know, on and on and on. As an example, in 2004, 2005, Allen, the UGA of Allen created a commercial zone. And that was all fine and hunky-dory. But after about 15, 16 years, no commercial development happened in this one portion of the zoning. And the way that the plat of Allen was, is that you couldn't put a commercial there because you didn't have the road. And it was kind of like, it was a catch-22. It couldn't go it couldn't be developed because there wasn't the ability to get commerce in it and what have you. By later on changing it to residential, that allowed private roads, so housing could develop so that there was a better land use, you know, and so that property owners could do something with their property, sell it, build it, whatever. So all I'm saying is, to me, there's strategically, it seems like there needs to be a component, a kind of an analysis of, you know, when you're talking capital facilities, past, present, future, you know, transportation, past, present, future, population, past, present, future, because, you know, and we'll get into, I'm sure later, but we'll look at certain numbers in these reports, and we also need to get on the same common denominator, meaning we need to sync up our reports. When you have the housing need assessment on doing its thing on 2021, and we're doing, you know, working out for 2020 or 2022, 23, it's hard for the average person to correlate, okay, where are we relative? Because when I look at it, I see discrepancies between, say, the housing needs assessment and our comp plan going forward. So I'll leave it at that. That's a good chunk right there.
Yes. I got a question and I guess a statement, I don't know, but or a concern would be kind of dovetailing on what you're talking about, would be transportation and infrastructure. And then to make sure that the funding is in place for those kind of things, if it's traffic impact fees that are charged to the developers, ultimately passed on to the, you know, to the homeowners or the, you know, the project developers or whatever they are, and also leapfrog development. You know, I think it's important to avoid leapfrog development where we're allowing a certain development to happen out away from where that infrastructure is already developed, and it creates a problem. You know, whether it's traffic or, you know, sewer trunk lines, water lines, you know, those kind of things, utilities, all the utilities that are involved with it. And that seems to me in the past, with my experience, that's where a lot of problems come up, is traffic and utilities.
Yeah, absolutely. When growth happens, you know, in a kind of a sprawling manner, or maybe there's a large bunch of growth, you know, several hundred developments or even 50, and then transportation is impacted hugely, or water is impacted hugely from that. Those are things that we can talk about through this process and address. And then going back to what the other gentleman said. I see what you're saying. Look at the existing, look at the future need, and then how do we get there? We got to look at the past just to see what worked, what did not work. Why didn't it work? Why didn't we do that? You know, why did we move away from development in the downtown or a sub area plan or something? That's kind of the stage we're in right now, is really understanding that environment, asking those questions, why or why didn't it happen? And then getting all of the existing conditions. Each one of these elements has its own existing conditions. And that's where the inventorying kind of takes place. How many arterials do you have? How many collectors? How many freeways go through the community? And how many are projected for the future based on that 20-year horizon, that population projection? You know, well, it's not a science, but we do our best to really gather that information so that we can feed that back into the plan update. But thanks for both of your comments, and I've taken those down here too. What else? What other priorities should there be? Peggy has a comment in the chat. She says, will there be a climate element included in the comp plan update per House Bill 1181? Yes, I believe there is a climate element in the comp plan. Let me just pull that up really quick. Marissa, I don't know if you have anything you want to add there. I'll grab the information that I have.
It wasn't in the list.
No, on something on page 23.
Well, I mean, yeah.
Of which document are you? Oh, you're on the checklist. Okay.
Yeah, checklist, yeah, but
We do have a scope of work for that if we want to take a look at that.
We can keep going with the comments. Peggy, I'm going to keep looking into this while we're on the line here. I know that is a part of the work. I think Christina's a little more familiar with that part, but I'm going to dig up what I can and then come back to it. More priorities. What are the priorities? What about growth in housing and that kind of thing? You have any strong thoughts or just thoughts on that?
well, it seemed like somewhere in one of the documents, I don't think it was the one we just went through, but one of the documents you had asking about of the elements, what was our priority?
Yeah.
So, as I recall, I kind of had, housing, employment, transportation, and then like public safety, all the different issues. And then, it's in reality, there, kind of one without the other is like a missing spoke in a wheel. The community doesn't work well. So there's, in one sense, there is a priority, you got to set priorities, but at the same time, if your public safety isn't doing good, but your priority is housing, transportation, and utilities, a community is gonna still suffer.
Right.
And
They all kind
Dad,
of work together. Go ahead.
it could kind of follow up on one of your questions. There's 3 or 4 developments that the city of Shelton has oversight on that we really don't have any good visibility on other than what's been publicly put out. And you're talking, I don't know, 1,200,
Yeah,
1,500
right.
units plus apartments. So, I mean, you're talking about a very significant activity for what you've been commissioned to do, but there's things in the city of Shelton that have an impact on your activity that we on the planning commission or planning advisory commission don't really have much of a handle for. So
Asking staff, weren't we supposed to parallel up with City of Shelton?
So we have had some internal meetings with
Right.
them to kind of discuss the boundaries of
Right.
the city UGA. So we had one of those, and we are supposed to be having some interagency meetings. They were included on the orientation interviews, I believe.
Because because your demographics, we're talking county, but it really includes the city.
Well, if the city grows from 1 in 6 to 1 in 5. Okay, city gets bigger and the county grows a little bit, but not as much as the city does, which has a direct impact on everything.
So does the city of Shelton have annex plans where they annex some of this out?
No, this
you know,
is existing city limits.
right, but I mean, in the future, do they plan?
Oh,
to annex?
probably.
Yeah,
They have plans, but we'll get into that
Okay.
because we got some issues.
right, because it seemed like those annex plans would impact what we're
No,
looking at.
but I mean, like. You kind of saw where I went the last time with capital facilities.
Yeah.
We got some issues.
Yeah.
And, you know, their plans say they don't have the funds. Well, okay, so what are we gonna do?
Yeah,
It's pretty clear if you're following, in my mind, if you follow the regs, what you gotta do. But nobody's bitten that bullet yet. So guess what?
Right.
Reality bites.
Right.
yeah, and that's what always happens, and there's a clash, you know, and you don't have the.
What I sense from us talking at this end of the table, not so much from the screen yet, but is there is a component here, somehow we're gonna have to dovetail some of the city, you know, at the high level at least, into what we're doing.
Mhm.
And then, you know, and hopefully they will work with us. They should.
Yeah. Bob, do you mind if I
Go ahead.
jump in just
You probably
high
wanna,
level?
you need to get up forward. That way they can hear you.
So, yeah, the county and the city of Shelton, so the city of Shelton is the only incorporated city in the county, and then we have two other unincorporated urban growth areas, Allen and Belfair. But the city and the county are required to do countywide planning policies, and so, and we both happen to have hired SCJ Alliance, two separate teams within that consulting group, but we will be coordinating together on those countywide planning policies. And we will be working on the same population projections. So we, you know, we have a, we'll
Right.
pick a 20-year population projection, and the city of Shelton will get a large chunk of that population. Belfair will get the other, Allen less so, and then the county will get the remainder. And of course, we're trying to, you know, push growth to the urban areas where there are.
I'm only laughing, smiling at your last statement because it's like, it's totally worked the other way. Where all the growth,
Yes.
the biggest volume of growth has been the county.
Correct.
Then it's been actually the two urban growth areas up north. And the city hasn't grown that much. But now there's a big number of developments coming on potentially that would flip that again back the other way. So that's the only reason I'm smiling.
Yes, and it has a lot to do with your infrastructure and your water availability and all that other good stuff, so.
Well, we haven't heard from Terry lately. Are you still listening?
I'm still alive and well.
And do you have any comments?
No, I'm just, I think it's a fun process. I've done it before with Kitsap County, and I'm excited to get started.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure you had your say.
Anything else?
Actually, I was looking at the website for the checklist, and it looks like there is an appendix added to say element up from the state. To answer, who was it? Peggy's question about 1181. And let's see, I'm just gonna click the link and put the chat in rather than finish more typing. That kind of answers Peggy's question, will there be a climate element included? And that answer appears to be yes, if you look at this link right there.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I've been looking for the details on the climate planning portion of the scope, and I really apologize. I'm coming up empty-handed on our files. I do need to connect with Christina on that. I'd be happy to summarize a bit of that process back and provide that to Marissa. Or if Marissa, you have anything you want to add, or any other of the staff, then that's helpful as well.
That last link, the huge gobbledygook link, should take you to the element updates on the navigation checklist. It's up on the website.
I'm gonna try to provide a link to our scope of work for the climate element, so people can take a look and see what's involved. So I'll try to put that in the chat in a minute here.
And so, actually, here I had that link that I put in isn't right, but this one is. It has the Appendix A, elements for 1181.
Thank you.
But
Somewhere along the line, it will be addressed.
Mm-hmm. And maybe that's a good thing to come back and talk about to you very soon. Maybe that March meeting, we can do something like that. Just before we move on, I know Linda's got her hand up here patiently. Climate planning is a kind of, is a pretty new thing since they passed that bill 1181. A lot of jurisdictions, we've been seeing their proposals or an RFPs come out for this type of work. I can show you some of what I know in terms of the grant, what the grant requires and what it is we're going to be looking at and which elements it's going to be integrating with. It's definitely pretty prescriptive in terms of how it's to be done. The resiliency portion is likely something that you'll be required to complete, as well as that integration into the transportation element and a few other elements. So we can talk about that a little more thoroughly next time. I know there's probably a lot of curiosity around that. Linda, did you took your hand
Yes.
down, did you? Okay.
Just a detailed question on the community profile list. We've listed all the items here. You've got agriculture, forestry, fishing, and hunting. Where does aquaculture come into that? Mason County has a huge aquaculture industry. Is that fishing? That doesn't fit there.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm gonna take that down. Community profile. Let me look to see if the fishing title is supposed to capture that. I know it doesn't quite fit there. So, and if it is a big topic and needs to be separated out, that's something we can look into a bit more and add more detailed information.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else or any specific, anything else you want me to address?
Doesn't look like it.
Okay. Right, let's see, get back on here.
are we gonna move on to the public engagement? Yeah.
Yes, okay, the approach to public engagement. So, here we've identified a few different things that we're going to do in our public engagement process. I mentioned we are already starting with the stakeholder interviews, and so we have several groups of, anywhere between 3 to 6 stakeholders that we're interviewing, and I can pull up the list for reference. And then we want to what this does, before I move on, is lays the groundwork for your public engagement process. It helps us understand what's going on with the different sectors that we have to study in our comp plan process. So I mentioned a little earlier that we interviewed the local chamber group, and we interviewed we're interviewing tribes, we're interviewing people from the school district, we're interviewing people from the fire district, your public works. We're touching base with the city staff during this process. And that's part of that information gathering component that we go through to really understand the foundation of your community. And then that starts to build into the rest of this process. It also helps us to sort of start to begin to tailor and sort of figure out what that public engagement is going to look like when we start to understand a little bit more about those hot button issues. We do know that climate is a big category that's coming up. We know that housing is a hot topic for folks, transportation, some of the things you've already mentioned tonight, and how growth impacts your facilities when it's transportation or it's utilities. And so we want to make sure that we're talking about those things to the public, and we know that they're going to come up. Let's see here. I keep going on my slides. So here's the engagement activities that we have proposed. There is a project website, and that's going to include the documentation that we're updating and creating during this process. So much of which you've already received, which is on your PAC website, but it can also be on the comp plan update website. Your community profile, your GMA checklist, elements of your comprehensive plan, maps, surveys, that can all be uploaded onto the public website. The website will talk a little bit about the update process so that when people have questions, or if we use QR codes for folks to scan, it takes them to that page to learn more about the process. We'll have social media, so we'll be using the Mason County social media. We can use SCJ social media to get the word out. That can be tailored to the county borders, or right around the county, so that you're getting people coming into the county as well. But mostly we want to focus on the county itself. The social media is really used as a way to get people to come to events. It's an outreach tool that we use to get to people so they can come to events. And it's a way that we broadcast that larger questionnaire that we're going to send out. And so that's going to be a design survey, really focusing on, again, those 3 scenarios, as well as other growth. I skipped over the orientation interviews there, but I think I belabored that enough. Public workshops. So we've got 2 public workshops, sort of 2 days for that. One is an informational meeting for the public to come and understand the process and provide some of that initial feedback on what some of the priorities are, and be able to begin with those conversations. The second workshop is going to address the policy changes within all of the elements. So at that point, what we will have worked through is taking a fine-tooth comb through your policy framework and actually vetting that with the public, those concepts and ideas and high-level themes, so that we can start to update that piece. We also have a studios series, and this is really focused on sort of a different types of charrettes, running the public through different scenarios and concepts to really think about that future vision looks like. So that's 4 meetings in total that we want to plan for, that we'll be doing over sort of the spring and summer months. And then the last piece, that roll out open house, that really happens after your plan is drafted. And this is, through all of this, we're coming back to the PAC and doing an update for you guys on what we're learning and how that's dumping into the plan, as well as your policy framework. And that rollout open house is really to show the bulk of work that we've done for the community and showing the plan. So we provide one more opportunity for public comment on the plan, and then we can move into that adoption phase and overlapping with EIS. The EIS is also built into the last end of the planning process. So we do have that draft environmental impact statement workshop that we have to go through. That's required in that environmental review. And then we will also get to the final EIS. Those are really overlapped with the final draft of that comprehensive plan. And then, of course, I've talked about coming back to the Planning Advisory Commission. This just, it keeps on reaffirming the direction that we're taking with the comp plan update and all of the public feedback that we've received. We want to make sure you guys understand the depth that we're going to in these engagement efforts, and so that we're hitting the mark. And if we need to adjust along the way, then we can. We also want to make sure that subsequent meetings are set up to achieve the overall goal and are hitting on those hot topics that you guys want to make sure we're talking about. You'll also be involved in the final adoption of the plan, reviewing the draft elements as well as the final draft. Okay, do you have any feedback on the engagement portion?
Go ahead, Jeff.
If I heard you correctly, you said like one meeting with the EIS portion.
There's at least one
Workshop.
required for the draft EIS. There can
No,
be
I-
more at times.
Okay, all I'm doing is heads up is that at least in the past, and maybe it's clean, it'll be quicker and easier this time, maybe. But in the past, if you took just like the Belfair EIS, you know, that was over, I want to say 3 or 4 meetings.
Ah,
And that's like one subsection of this county. So maybe the rest will go quicker. But my guess is that it might not, based upon experience.
right.
Well, I think, I mean, the comp plan update, it's going to have an environmental impact statement, but for Belfair, it was a planned action EIS, so it was almost like its own comp plan, you know, the sub area plan update with the EIS.
Fair.
So this is, you know, your meetings are going to be comprehensive plan, and we know there's also on the back end, there is an environmental impact statement. And the reason we chose to do the EIS, it's not required.
Right.
We wanted to do it for future housing development
Okay.
can be exempt from future SEPA requirements if we have an EIS that addresses all of the supposed or presumably higher densities in our urban growth areas.
Okay, but I bring it up that, you know, if we can, that's fine. I'm just saying that, you know,
So I see it more of it like an
It's-
integrated.
that's fine,
process.
and I have no problem with integration.
Yeah.
I mean, more the merrier, but experience always tells me that given the nature of those kind of things, that I don't think one workshop's gonna cut it.
You're being dubious about the number of workshops.
Yeah. I mean, just, you know, just based upon past experience, you
Mhm.
know.
No, that's just, yeah.
You know, then I think possibly the same, you do have it broken up on different segments a little differently this time. But, you know, again, public workshops at 2, you know. A little might be kind of interesting. Other than that-
We got plenty of libraries in the county.
I hear you. But that still means you gotta get the data to here.
Mhm.
So anyway, that's my 2 bits. Thank you.
Thank you.
Which social media sites? I mean, more than just Facebook, right? Maybe LinkedIn also? Or what other social media sites? And
That's
what
a-
is,
yeah.
what is a studio series? In a TV studio? I doubt that, but
Well, let's just say social media first. We'll work with the county on the different platforms that they have available, and they're welcome to chime in at any point. We have worked with LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. We've done broadcasting through public meetings through Facebook and YouTube. So all of those things are possible. It's a matter of what the county typically maintains. Not everybody has an Instagram or a LinkedIn. But it
Right.
depends on what they have. Staff,
like I don't use Facebook, I mean, you know. So I guess we can't do all of them, but maybe we can, I don't know.
Department of Development doesn't have its own social media sites. So
I guess we could simply say that that will be determined in the future.
yeah, absolutely. And I did mention that we being SCJ can do some of the boosting and notification stuff through our social media sites. What that looks like is it's your branding, your materials that get published, and then we can use the tool within the social media to pinpoint where that information is being broadcasted. So it's not going out to anybody who follows SCJ, it's going out to, we can draw a boundary like around Mason County, so it's just the people within Mason County. I know that there's not a planning and development Facebook, but does that also mean that there's not a countywide Facebook page? Sometimes the communications department or that kind of thing will have its own, but you're saying no?
No, we do have a county Facebook page.
Oh, you have a county one, okay.
Why don't we just use the masoncountylaw.gov page? Forget about social media. Just put the events on. I was also curious. I didn't hear where you said the events in the public engagement would be listed.
Yeah, we
So-
can put those on the website that I was referring to. I think the website you might have just mentioned is the county website. Yeah, masoncountylaw.gov. Yeah, we can have a special dedicated page to the comp plan process if that's the direction that the department wants to take.
We
Go ahead.
already do. We do have a page.
Yeah, there's something. Yes.
We have
Yeah,
some pretty established homeowners associations and groups in different areas of the county, that unincorporated county, that I think we could reach out to. I can try and get you some information on that.
Okay. Yeah, that's possible as well. Our stakeholders, they want to continue to be involved in the process, so they'll be able to disseminate information out to the bodies that they're involved in, or part of their organizations or groups. So that's also another way. It's really the point in bringing up the social media really is just to disseminate information, and the details of that are still yet to be worked through. But I'm trying to share with you kind of a high level of what we do with our other clients and what has worked. And that's all dependent on, does the county have a web page? Do they have a social media site? And we can work through all of those details, and where we come up maybe a little short, then we just have to maybe have more boots on the ground in another way.
So this is a work in progress, and the studio series and the public workshops and stuff will be dates and locations will be identified soon, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so the studio series, Brad had asked what that was. It's like a public meeting, but it's supposed to be more interactive, where people are coming in and really involved in what the community visioning is going to be looking like. So you can imagine walking in, you have planners standing there, hopefully with city staff or somebody who can represent the county, because there's always those county questions that maybe aren't related to the comp plan or what have you. So it's always good to have that pairing. And we're really getting into, what does the land use look like? What is the housing situation? Where is density being added? And what does that mean for me? What if I'm a neighbor? What if I live in that part of the county? How does that impact me? It's a much more hands-on experience, where we're working on worksheets or working on boards, writing things up. It's much more hands-on than just your open house, where you're standing there and someone kind of talking to you at each station. It's meant to be interactive. And so the development of that really comes down to the direction that the county is taking in this update process.
Okay. Anything else from anybody?
Nope. No. Next segment.
Next.
Next, okay, here we go. Okay, so our next steps, we want to wrap up that baseline assessment, that community profile, as well as looking at those other planning documents, get that wrapped up, and then we've already started to take a bit of a look through your policy framework, getting that information organized and coming back and working with you all first, and then developing themes and moving into that public engagement. As we're getting into, the end of February this week, we really need to put our foot on the gas for that public engagement, get those dates scheduled out, get that information on the website, determine how we're disseminating that information through those different touch points, and really get that part of the project moving. So those are really the next steps in the next, 6 to 9 months, I'd say. And then we'll overlap that time with the writing of your comp plan. Brad has a question about the tribes that are involved, the 4 tribes, Quinault, Skokomish, Squaxin Island, Squacomish, and
Well, actually, I just put that in for later. if we get
Okay.
into, I saw your two documents, the plan, PPP, had a conflict, so like I said, it only listed 4 tribes in the PPP and only Skokes and Squaw in the community profile. So one of them's wrong,
Okay.
probably.
Well.
Yeah.
A revision away from perfection.
Excuse me?
I'm sorry.
Excuse me, what was that?
Moving on.
Yeah, let him say it.
Well, there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
So the Quinault and the Suquamish have UNA in the county, but they're not located like the Squaxin and Skokomish tribe are. So that's why there are 4 tribes, but only 2 in the community profile.
That would make sense.
I don't know that I understand your answer, but whatever. So it wasn't an oversight, I guess.
Next.
Can I just say something?
Go ahead.
Can I say something?
Why don't you get up a little
Oh,
closer?
yeah.
Because the speaker's up here.
Thank you.
So I would like to know, when you are going to develop the vision statement, how you're going to handle that and get it out and maybe have people comment and make revisions on that, because I've been through, this is my, is 3rd or 4th time on this thing. And last time, you know, we got stuck right away on the vision statement. So, how are you gonna do that? Who are you gonna have help you, or what is it going to be?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that it's a work, it will be kind of a work in progress. I don't want you to get stuck on that piece again. I'll tell you kind of high level what we normally do. So as I've been mentioning, right now we're really gathering information on Mason County through the interview process, as well as gathering through the data and the demographics, as well as other previous plans. What we start to see is that we see themes start to shape, and we really can start to capture what we're hearing into that vision statement. And the first step really is just to kind of get a draft together of everything that we've heard, the high level themes, the things that keep coming up time and again every time we meet with folks, and get that down on paper. And then we bring it back to workshop with you. We want to make that iterative process where we're coming back, refining what that vision statement looks like. I would never want that to go forward where it wasn't representative of what the county and what the PAC here is thinking. So we look at the high level themes, we write the vision statement, we come back and workshop it with you. And then when we get it to a point where we're ready to share it with the draft or with the public, we'll take that draft out to the public for public comment. It's not necessarily as a situation where anything gets scratched out at that point, like in terms of what you and I work through in terms of your vision statement. It's becomes more refined through the engagement process. And typically what we find is people really align with the visioning, the values, the high level themes that we've already identified in our early engagement process. Once we've workshopped that through the public, we bring that all that information back to you and provide a summary of what the engagement has told us, and also provide you with sort of our recommendations on how that would be worked into that original draft of the vision statement. And that's where we would probably take some liberties to write it up and actually share it with you to see how you respond to it, where you align, where you don't align on that vision statement. It's nice to have a somewhat consolidated process. So I want to be, strategic and thoughtful about each of the steps. Don't want to waste any of your time coming back meeting after meeting for months on end through that process, but listen to you the first time and really put that information in, and then of course build in that public layer. You have any questions about that?
Is SCJ staff that's working on this, are there times that you're going to come to Mason County?
Yes,
Be in
absolutely.
county? You're gonna be in county?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
Just check. Mhm.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. Any
Okay.
more, anything from anyone?
Not on this segment.
Not on this segment, yeah, exactly.
Okay, I had a Q&A slide in here. I feel like we maybe have got through most of that. We can certainly answer any remaining questions, but there's mine and Christina's contact information on the screen there. If you want to take that down, it is in your packets. You're more than welcome to reach out with other questions. And that's all I have for you.
So how's the weather in Spokane?
Oh, it's okay. I got two little boys, a 1.5-year-old and a 6-year-old. They're ready for the summer. So am I. Thanks for asking.
So we're gonna discuss any, at least a high level, any of the other reports, or
You want to? It's 7:25 and the staff no doubt
I'll make it quick.
wants to go home.
I'll make it a real hierarchical.
You make a what?
I'll make it real hierarchical, meaning high level. You know, I see discrepancies in our, like our community profiles, okay? And part of it, again, it goes along this alignment that we need to get all the different reports in sync. But are we gonna have what I'm concerned about is that if we don't get our demographics right, we're gonna come to the wrong conclusion. And I want to make sure that, we hammer through that. And I'm kind of I'm into numbers, I'm into data, and I don't like it when things are not lining up well. Just generically speaking.
Can you share, I mean, what I would do if I were you, would share the discrepancies you're finding with Marissa.
Okay,
So that we can work with the consultants to make sure they're matching up. So we get that, the housing needs assessment was completed at the end of 21, or was it 22? 21?
22.
22, okay.
Spring.
So, obviously that's going to feed into our housing element with our new,
Right, and there's-
population projections, but there's no other way to do it.
Okay.
So any discrepancies you find would be helpful if we're not finding those as well. I mean, Marissa and I talked about things today, and
Yeah.
I worked with her on the things I found.
It's just, no problem. In other words, probably what I'll do is, because we're just at the early stages of this, and I'll try to create a spreadsheet of,
Which rocks to look under.
and try to kind of correlate it to element, so that you're not running all over the place on it. But it just, I'm concerned that, and this gets also back to this issue, that the demographics have to look at where we've been and where we are and where we're possibly going. Because there's some things stated in here that are assumptions. And I mean, yet they're stated like fact. And, as an example, I'll give an example. There's a statement in here that we're growing at the same rate the state is. That's not true. Okay, for example, the state since 1960 to today, or to 2020, the state's grown 2.7 times. Mason County's grown 4 times. So that's different. But that's not, when you read it, that's not what you infer. And I don't like that. And I'll find it and I'll highlight it and I'll make a page number and you'll have the whole 9 yards. That's an example. For example, Mason County, in all the years as it existed, the last decade, 2010 to 2020, was the 3rd slowest growing one, percentage-wise. These are using US Census numbers. So I'm concerned. The reason I'm concerned about this feeds back into capital facilities, feeds into all the different things. It seems like we screw up and make a mess of the thing, and we get too expensive utilities when we could have done it differently. But we had the wrong factors, so we get down this path, and then also we're looking back and say, well, if we'd only done this.
It seems to me the demographics are based pretty much off of the US Census, which is good as of 2020,
Okay,
right?
but here's another classic point. In Mason County, we have a way higher percentage of disabled people of working age than any county around here. More than Washington State, more than, literally 1 in 7. Or, it's actually 1 in 7.5. But you never know that, but when you look at census data, nobody talks about that, nobody looks at that. Those are attributes and things maybe we should be focusing on.
Well,
Anyway,
yeah, I mean, it's like Kel said, and
anyway,
pointed
but that gives you a flavor.
give them chapter and verse and which rock
Yeah.
to look under, and then
That gives you a
give
flavor.
staff something to do. In addition to what they're doing now. I'm sure they'll look forward to that.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure they will too. But okay,
Yeah,
fair.
your point is well taken, Jeff, and you're right. If we gotta get it right the first time, it makes life much better down the road.
Hopefully. You've got hopefully a better
True.
chance.
Okay.
No guarantees, but hopefully better.
Okay. Anybody have anything else to bring up at this time?
Nope.
Anybody online? Hearing
Yep.
none. Okay,
16th of March was the date,
18.
18, yeah.
18 March.
okay, Jeff, we'll entertain a motion to,
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
and Mike.
I'll
you-
second.
Mike, okay, everybody, ready? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, we're done.
Go Zags.